Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. Threat Connect is the industry's most widely adopted threat intelligence platform. Built to unite the people, processes, and technologies across your security team, your organization, and your entire ecosystem of partners. Threat Connect's threat intelligence platform enables your team to collaborate, analyze, and make sense of threat data all in one place. Empower your team towards fast and efficient analysis that leads to decisive action. Transform your entire threat detection and response program today. Claim your free account at threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Faraday is an open source collaborative pen test and vulnerability management platform. With real-time dashboards and more than 50 tools, Faraday allows seamless integration with your security workflow, allowing CISOs and pen testers to see in real time the impact and risks uncovered from assessments. Scan your network every day using different tools and get one-click reports, creating a collaborative experience, sharing knowledge, and making pen testing fun again. This is Faraday. Visit faradaysec.com for more information. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. Are we actually streaming? Guys, are we actually streaming? Because the streaming server, oh, I wanted to throw it. I almost threw it in the middle of the street this week. That's how frustrated I was with it. It was terrible. Terrible, terrible issue. The heat sink, it's those rack mount systems.
Yeah, the Nokia ones, right?
The heat sink is a little too tall.
Oh.
So you kind of have to like lift up the top to push it back in. And I think just the pressure caused the CPU to like come like not happy. It was not happy.
You need to cut a hole on the top of the case or something.
So that's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take some tin snips. Like cut a channel in the top so the heat sink, because that system gets hot. It needs a really big heat sink with It has dual 4-inch fans on the heat sink. Yeah.
And the other fans on your wife, right? She gets hot too.
Yes. Wow. That system was 5. I don't know. Anyway, it's amazing that so if you're watching a live stream, just sacrifice something to the computer gods so that we keep streaming, because our streaming server needs the extra love and prayers and affection.
So does my USB hub.
So does Joff's USB drivers on his Mac. Yep. Yes. Kevin's with us. Hey, Kevin.
Hello.
What's going on?
Hey, no, that's not Kevin.
That is not Kevin.
Yep. See, Kevin, I'm living the dream too, and sometimes it's just a nightmare.
The American dream.
The American dream.
In debt up to my eyeballs and a wallet full of credit cards.
That is a nightmare.
We talked about this first story back in the days of Twitchy, which I still get emails to this day.
Where's Twitchy?
People still ask me what happened to Twitchy.
We buried him.
We did.
We put him in a coffin. We drove him around in a hearse.
We did that. we did do that actually, which is just amazing to think about. But it's a fictional piece that we did.
Yes.
When we buried Twitchy, it's a fictional piece. But anyway, in the days of Twitchy, he was printing out pictures of people and using that to bypass the facial recognition on, was it smartphones or was it to unlock your computer? I don't think the smartphones technology existed for facial.
I think it was your computer.
It was your computer would use your facial and he was using that. And now you can get pictures from Facebook. And he was doing this years ago. He is a pioneer, a true pioneer in computer security.
And they fixed the problem for a while, and then it came back again.
It's interesting.
Or I know there was some folks that had posited that they had fixed the problem, that you couldn't use a printed photograph because it was doing 3-dimensional type of stuff. And well, that's when you just bend the picture, right?
That's still 2-dimensional, Larry.
But it's in. Never mind.
If you like crumple the picture up and then uncrumple it,
strategic crumpling.
Strategic crumpling. Will that get by it?
Maybe.
Mr. Carlos Perez has joined us. Welcome, Carlos.
Hey.
What's going on, Carlos?
Doing good.
We're talking about bypassing facial recognition with a printed out picture on a piece of paper.
Cool.
Paul does lots of facial recognition.
Yeah, more than likely won't work with Windows Hello.
Why is that?
It actually checks via IR that it is an actual face.
Hmm.
I bet that
Interesting.
could be spoofed.
Probably.
All right, so I heard some stuff about doing the new fingerprint sensors, that it has to be the right temperature of some variety.
Really?
So, well, then you need the actual finger or Jello that's the right temperature. Right.
Or you heat up your silly putty.
Yeah.
Or if you hold your silly putty over your finger long enough,
it'll-
it should heat up.
Yep.
Or just hold it over, or put it, you know what? Hold your finger in the sunlight for a little while, and then.
That's interesting. Because the article you're referring to, Paul, here, they're not just doing paper. They're actually rendering these images. They're high quality enough. They're making 3D models out of it, and then they manipulate and animate the eyebrows moving to actually trick the liveliness detection
Oh,
of
shit.
these
So like
facial-
a 3D printer, but you're making something that actually moves.
Essentially, yeah, they're actually not printing it. So they're saying they're using a VR system, and I'm air quoting for our audio listeners.
Oh, damn.
I don't know what that means,
Mhm.
but they're actually showing a rendered moving image, and by making the face manipulating and move, that's how they're getting past the liveliness detection, whatever that also means.
Interesting.
So they're like taking a HoloLens and they're
Yes,
putting it in
that's
front
what I
of
was
the
thinking.
camera, and they're 3D rendering a body from a Facebook image.
Exactly, yeah.
It's crazy.
Apparently, Americans want passwords and not biometrics. Speaking of this topic,
Is the password?
In a lot of cases, Kevin, yes, the password is actually password.
Wait. The thing that concerns me with biometrics and always has, and I wonder if this is the reason. I haven't read the article, but it's you can't change it, right? If you get a fingerprint, fingerprint stored somewhere, or a hash of a fingerprint stored somewhere, what if it gets compromised?
You got to change your fingerprints.
We
Gotta
actually talk
change your
about that
fingerprints, right?
in our interview. We actually talk about that.
Yeah. And that'll be one of the next.
Because a fingerprint essentially ends up as a stored hash on
Yep.
on whatever device it is.
Yep.
It depending on the implementation, but
right.
yeah.
That'll be. I predict that'll be some of the next perfections for cosmetic surgery is fingerprint replacement.
Fingerprint replacement. It's going to have to be if biometrics catches on, which is really an abysmal state of
You think
affairs.
that'll be like a home kit? Like I can see it in like a science fiction movie. Like I need to recode my fingerprint, so I just stick my finger in this
Yeah, and it's called
magic box. That sounds really bad.
Um,
I apologize to our listeners for that.
Wow.
For that last
Well, I don't know
statement.
about
Well,
you,
the-
You stick your finger in a hot box.
The only way
I
you
mean,
can
wait, what?
change it is scarring, so it would have to be something painful.
Right. Like this. So what is the name?
Nah,
of
you
the,
just spritz some lidocaine on it.
what's the name?
fine.
What's the name of the box that Paul Atreides had to put his hand in for the test with
And-
the
and-
Kwisatz Haderach?
And was it moist?
No. Apparently, it was very dry and hot. What? You guys haven't read the book Dune?
No, I'm not.
Nope. I think
my
I have,
God.
but it's been a while.
Okay.
So
I have
I've
not read
So
the book.
he has to go through this
Every ingredient's
test. It's a mental test, and he has to put his hand in this box, and he's led to believe that his hand is on fire, and he has to leave. He has to leave his hand in the box, no matter how much it hurts.
I got
And
you.
if he pulls the hand out, he dies, because that's the test. Because he has to prove that he's quote the one. And if he pulls his hand out, the priestess is going to kill him because she's got a loaded needle to his neck. But if he leaves his hand in, he thinks his hand is basically going to get burned off to the bone. But then he might actually be the one, and then
And
he might
Morpheus
still get killed.
Morpheus believes he's the one. so-
Exactly.
All right. Did he take the red pill or the blue pill?
Yes, you can actually burn your fingerprints off.
But then you wouldn't.
Yep.
You have to burn them off, and then you have to remake them to change your.
well, then you just have a fingerprint that's this lumpy burn.
Yeah, the problem is that you cannot rebuild what it would actually look like an actual fingerprint.
You just have
Really?
this. You just have
You
this
cannot create scars that thin
lumpy yet.
with that contour right now with the
Oh.
technology that we have. Remember,
Interesting.
the only way for you to change that your skin is an organ, and that piece of the organ, the only way that you can actually influence the grooves in it is by actually destroying very deep the first two layers of the skin and then scars are generated, which will alter. You can alter your fingerprint as long as you alter enough the different points that somebody would use to match your fingerprint, or you can just destroy all of the groups in it. And what you would have probably are some creases, but those creases would anybody looking at it would actually know, yeah, he destroyed his fingerprints. So now you're even more identifiable because not everybody does it.
So I
Be an
want
anomaly in the system.
so what I want now.
So everyone
is a
needs to
programmable
melt off
finger.
their fingerprints.
Right.
I want a programmable finger. That's what I want.
They tell
They
it,
sell those, Joff, at your various adult stores and adult websites.
No, not that kind of finger. I want a programmable.
I was going to add a
finger
story
for
about
fingerprints.
programmable fingers.
no, about sex toy hacking, but I decided that I didn't want to talk about it in the show because
Thanks.
it's so cliche.
And
Tony,
we've
pretty
been there and done that, haven't we?
That's kind of what I was thinking. That's the story didn't offer up much of a different perspective.
It was presented again at DEF CON this year.
Again, yeah, and we've talked about it so much in the past.
And I've done it and presented on it at DEF CON.
The article did say that if someone were to take advantage of your sex toy, like hack into it remotely, that it could be like remote sexual abuse. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I might have read in a story this year.
Wow.
I just
I think it'd be just annoying because it'd be probably sitting in a box somewhere.
yeah,
at
like
2 o'clock in the morning.
That's why I didn't put the story in there because it's not even worth reading, and their perspectives were just way off, and they're really just capitalizing on the sensationalism of the whole.
We were trying to do the capitalize on the sensational stuff, but we found really interesting stuff out of it at the end, like how some of the companies were trying to force social value, and.
Well, and I think in terms of privacy, it's not. I don't know. Is it a huge? I don't know. Is it that big of a deal?
The object itself, no.
It depends on how they're collecting the data.
The technology that was used around it became potentially risky.
It depends on if they know it's you, or if, let's say, you manufacture such a device.
I'm not
you're
even
collecting a unique identifier for each device, and then associate with that unique identifier, you're doing statistics on like what modes people are using and how often people are using it, and that kind of thing. When they associate with you, yes, there is somewhat of a privacy violation.
now,
but I guess there's a right and a wrong way to collect
and
that data. But also you have to, as we've talked about with privacy, and Kevin, you can weigh in on this, right? As long as you're upfront with what data you're collecting, how it's collected, and how it's stored, and how it's used, then that's okay, right? Like if they're using it to make the product better, all the more power to you.
Sure.
Or
they're using it to make the product better through revenue generation. You are the product and that type of stuff. Now, the approach that we had when Don and I did this was that it wasn't about the privacy necessarily, and it was interesting that we found that there was some social value being forced upon folks with the technology, but it was more about the technology itself, because like IoT stuff in many cases is not just about this product that vibrates. It's a collection of systems that have vulnerabilities in them and can release data, not just about how you use this device, but what other systems does it interact with? Do you do plain text authentication with the mobile app that connects to a server that controls your device? What data should the mobile app be compromised? What other areas on the device can it access? What else is stored on the server that's a central control? What information gathering can you do once you're there?
Right.
And it's a collection of systems.
And it ties into a story I have on hacking smart cities, which I kind of related to, like if you really start to think about what you can do with hacking a smart home, right? And we talked about this on, I think it was Startup Security Week that I started talking about this, but I wanted to explore it further with this show and all of you in our audience, is that to me, any one individual device, sure, it has security and privacy concerns if a remote, unauthorized person would take control of it. However, I think more scary and more interesting is if you can start tying that data together. So think about if I have, and this is a really bad example, you folks will come up with better examples. When I come to my door, ring, can see that there's someone at my door. Maybe Ring does facial recognition, or maybe Ring can scan for devices. Maybe, let's just say you build a Bluetooth low energy sensor into Ring, and it says, oh, there's a Fitbit attached, and that Fitbit matches my nephew. Oh, if it's my nephew, he likes to raid the fridge and eat all my food. My refrigerator is smart, so it's automatically going to lock and put a passcode on it when my nephew visits. Now, that's just one really lame example. However, I think, as we were talking about earlier, the slower adoption because of security and privacy, I think that's going to be even more of an issue when we start to present these scenarios about just how scary it is when you start tying these different pieces of data together from devices in your home that have never collected data about you, that all of a sudden are connecting, and not just collecting data about you, but able to talk to each other. So let's think about the refrigerator example for a moment. Let's say it's monitoring what I'm putting in and out of my fridge, monitoring my shopping list because I'm putting my shopping list in my refrigerator, I'm accessing remotely. And let's say I'm putting in my refrigerator a lot of really fatty foods and telling my refrigerator to notify me when I'm out of those particular products. That refrigerator now collects that data about me and sends it to my health insurance provider, who then jacks up my rates. That's the kind of
or even
that
better,
kind of thing.
Even better, it works with your instead of doing it directly, there's a step in there. Maybe it communicates with your iOS device that has your health collection data from your Apple Watch, so it also knows how much you're exercising
coupled with your diet.
And then you work with your employer, who has this program about reducing
a wellness
program that they take all of that data from your stuff, and it's all legitimate and not just sending it.
But they want to sell it as incentivizing, like, hey, if you sign up for our program, we'll monitor your exercise and your diet, and if you're showing that you're exercising and eating a healthy diet, we'll lower your rates.
Yep.
But that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Kevin, I want to get your take on all of this.
It's a really interesting topic. I mean, going back to what we were talking about before about being upfront when it comes to your privacy and policies, I can't really think of one good example off the top of my head when it comes to data aggregation that a company's been actually pretty good at letting their users know, unless reading between the lines or a lawyer. When you start talking about your average user, they're going to have no idea what they're agreeing to when they use these things. So I was actually just doing a little Googling as we were talking about this, because it reminded me of a talk that was at the Hope Conference this summer. And it's about hacking or I guess hack is probably the wrong term, investigating the Link NYC payphones that are kiosks that are now being spread throughout the city. Essentially, payphones don't exist anymore, so they replace all these payphones with free access points through a bunch of subsidiaries behind Google. So it's providing citywide Wi-Fi. Now, there are a lot of interest into what this actual box is doing, and what they're discovering is that the policies on privacy around this, if you go to the Link NYC website to look at what they're actually collecting, the privacy policy only applies to you actually viewing the website. It says nothing about what the system is actually doing.
Very interesting.
And there is no forward communication to the public. So the ACLU is involved trying to figure out, hey, what are you guys actually doing? Because with Google, we've already known they're pretty good at collecting wireless information and to profile people on them. So when you start thinking about smart cities, it's not just the thermostats and locks you're putting on our front doors. Cities are rolling out entire
monitoring programs.
Networks. I mean, the Netherlands is on the forefront of this, actually building out an entire citywide IoT network. And what they do with that means you can integrate lights, you can integrate traffic signs, you can integrate the subway system. So there are all these very lightweight sensors that are now being embedded into the physical infrastructure of cities. What's going to happen next is anyone's guess. We're going to start people.
Hey, Joff, I got an idea for you, Joff.
Yeah.
So I have a smart bed. I got one of those sleep number beds.
Okay.
It actually tracks your sleep, right?
Okay.
And I've got a TV in the bedroom, right, where conceivably, if it's a Roku player, you could monitor how much you watch TV, coupled with your diet that's coming from your refrigerator. You tie all those things together, you can build a profile of a person.
And your internet-connected dildo.
And you're in, so you could tie that into, sure. Just for you, Larry. For you, Larry, we'll tie that into.
Okay.
Now, Joff, I'm starting to think is the evil things that come from having these devices are the ability for them to talk to each other. Maybe independently, if they're collecting data from them, they could share data on the back end, and that's one scary thing.
Ad hoc networks.
But what if you put them all on their own network? Like, what if we come up with the technology so that they can't talk to each other? And all of your IoT devices, basically, they have to, because there's no reason for my bed to have to talk to my refrigerator, right? Yep. Is that where we're headed? Although they can do it on the back end if they want.
Actually, I have a different perspective. I think that in our lifetimes, we will see emerging technology that places control of data back in the consumer or the customer's hands, if you like. Now, and I think it'll be forced by the realization that privacy is lost, but it's going to take probably 10 or 20 years before people really start to understand that they've lost that privacy entirely. Now, what that technology looks like, I would like to see it emerge, some sort of meta tagging system, if you like, where the consumer that's dealing with all these various...
that's kind of like the evil bit, like packets that are evil. I just put like a little evil bit on them.
And then
I would like to see, I've believed this a long time, actually. I would like to see some sort of system that allows me as a consumer of various services from various businesses,
choose what you
be
share,
able to exert some control over whatever data they collect on me. And I think we're going to see that in our lifetime from a legislative perspective, and we're going to be forced to solve the problem eventually.
I want to, as someone who's concerned about privacy, you want to see it as an opt-in.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you opt in, there should be some kind of benefit for that.
Thinking back to Kevin's the stuff in New York City about the phone booths, I noticed that in London that they're taking out the old school London red, traditional phone booths, and they're replacing them with.
That's the doctor. The
TARDIS.
TARDIS. Thank you.
TARDIS, that's the police box, not the phone booth. But they're painting them green, and they're making Wi-Fi hotspots. And I would venture to guess that they are very similar type of monitoring.
They should just replace them with the TARDIS.
They should. They're bigger on the inside.
That'd be awesome.
Solve so much of the housing
more
problems.
of us nerds want to go to London just to see.
They solve so much of the housing crisis or housing problems because they're bigger on the inside.
And it comes with an awesome scarf.
Yeah,
brilliant.
The other one that I think about is, Joff, you're saying that we're going to see this in our lifetime, but what is it really going to take? What's going to be the pivotal moment for that to happen? Is it going to be a Daniel Suarez Damon type of moment?
I think
is it going to be worse, or is it going to be
talk
better?
about a pioneer that's looked way into the future to see how this could play out.
Man. I love that. I love that guy.
I think it's going to take a big compromise, way beyond some financial. It's going to have to be a compromise that affects data that is touching multiple facets of individuals' lives in such an egregious way that it's a disastrous kind of event. It's going to take that.
I don't think we're that far off, to be honest with you.
I don't think
with the
we're that
technology and the lack of security and privacy I'm seeing today, I don't think we're that far off.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, and just to continue with the security theater here, what company so far do you know of IoT devices is collecting enough of this type of information across all different types that it could create that profile and be so invasive into privacy if compromised?
I mean, I don't, to be honest with you, Carlos, I don't have evidence that companies are sharing data.
Right.
However, the trend that I've seen is that the manufacturer of a device increasingly is collecting data about its users without telling. I mean, I hate to use the sex toy example, but that was the story we covered not too long ago, where they were collecting data without really disclosing exactly what they were collecting.
And and Carlos, I'm going to take your IoT device thing a little bit more broad, and I think that there's probably 3 companies that I would argue that are probably in a position to start doing that: Apple, Google, and Amazon.
But you see, to speak to Carlos's point, right? You see Facebook and Amazon already doing that.
Yep.
When you go search for something on Amazon, you start seeing ads for that on Facebook.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say they're already cooperating with cookies and web browsers, so it's not much of a leap to go from there to cooperating with any kind of IoT device that's doing anything. It's really,
to Carlos's point, it is somewhat security theater, Carlos, at this point.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we get the message out so that it doesn't become an issue. And the theater
Or
part
more
comes
theater.
into there are, I mean, I don't have personally examples of devices sharing this information. I'm just kind of theorizing what if they were. The information that they could gather is valuable enough that they would go there.
Yep. Let's put it this way: if I can almost guarantee that there are companies out there that are doing data aggregation type services for all of this type of stuff. They're buying into all the APIs and correlating this data. Why? Because if these 5 chuckleheads on a podcast are positing about it after a couple of drinks, some savvy business dude 3 years ago has thought about the same thing.
The thing I struggle with is laundry, right? Like, how does like how often that I do laundry? Like, how is that data used?
Well, they need
It
to know,
impacts my life in a negative way.
well, they need to know how you're dealing with your personal hygiene from a
They're going to collect your
health
underwear
perspective.
skinny ratio.
They can talk about your potential salary given by the quantity of detergent that you use, detergent fabric softener, and the choices based on price.
Well, yeah, because you have the Amazon button.
Dash button.
Button, thank you.
Or through any of your other purchases through Amazon, you name it, or any of your advertising tracking.
What if you bring-
but they
what
could
if
get
you
that
bring in
without
biotech?
They can monitor your water usage to find out how often you're doing laundry and how much laundry you're
how much
doing.
water are you
But
using.
wait,
But
it
that
gets
speaks to how many
worse.
times you're flushing the toilet, which brings me always
So to maybe how much laundry
brings me
you're doing.
always to the toilet, which
Right.
is where we go on the show more often than
Well,
not.
I mean, it could get
is
a
the
lot worse.
toilet.
What if we bring in biotech and your washing machine is capable of taking DNA sample from your clothing and transmitting that? As
Or your
data?
toilet is taking urine samples from you.
Yeah, I mean, it goes there. There is endless.
And that was just theory. I don't believe that technology exists today, and if it does, it's not in widespread
There's
use.
no.
That was almost like
Yeah,
the onion
we're going
story.
down several rabbit holes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Carlos.
Isn't
Carlos,
it
bring us
fun?
back to reality, please. I don't. We're
Well,
away.
I do find it interesting this conversation comes up actually more often than not. And I start to realize that I think we maybe have this kind of misconception when we think of these kind of IoT privacy invading things, that we think of hardware generally when IoT. So I can't think my thermostat's actually gathering that much information, but it could be embedding a unique profile or cookie into its outbound data profile, which is added into an advertising network, which then uses other means of data collection to build a larger profile. So when I think of these kind of very larger networks, I think if it's been doing for a very long time and it's advertising. It's why Google
Kevin,
and Facebook
it's
exist.
interesting, and feel free to argue this point, but I
will.
feel, and I know you will, but I feel like when I'm using software or hardware and technology in my home, and it's being used such to the means to an end is advertising, so that I get advertising that's tailored towards me, that is a privacy kind of trade-off.
But remember, go back to your initial point that when the whole conversation that spurned from this was you saying that these companies have to, if they're upfront about what they're doing, then it is okay. These companies are not being upfront when they inject a zombie cookie into your machine that is persistent, that tracks you through every website you go to. It is not being upfront, which is why the FCC is stepping in saying you cannot have applications like Silverpush installed maliciously into Android applications that tie into your Samsung smart television to hear very particular audio waves to know that you're in a room when a commercial is being played, that then ties back into a larger advertising network.
Welcome to Carl's Jr., home of the big ass fries.
So it's like this is some really crazy stuff. We're actually now.
I mean, in that sense, Kevin, I mean, advertising could be the gateway into more evil things. I feel like if it's just used to target advertisements towards me, I'm like, yeah, that's not a huge thing. But
It's an annoyance.
It's an annoyance. Well, it's less of an annoyance because the ads that are targeted towards me are for me. So I'm not really annoyed by an ad because I'm kind of like, yeah, I would buy that. You know, like that's kind of where we're going, right?
It's like,
but
why do people send spam? Because it works. Because people buy that.
But
stuff.
when it transitions into a different realm where it could have negative consequences for me, so I plug this device into my car, or maybe my car is just smart enough to talk to my home, that it knows how fast I'm driving, that makes my insurance rates go up because in my Mini Cooper I drive really fast, right? Then that starts to bother me. And I think it's kind of like advertising, I guess what I'm saying is like the gateway drug to really bad things happening in terms of our privacy.
the first one's free.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway, that was a really deep rabbit hole.
That was
it was awesome.
Carlos was trying to drag us out of it. Props to Carlos for trying to bring reality into this show. Ashley Madison agrees that a security overhaul is needed after a damning report. Is it surprise to anyone that security...
It took them this long?
Why is this news? I don't understand.
Why is it news now? I mean, really?
I mean, didn't the damning report come out months ago when they had that leak of all this?
In the form of a breach?
Yeah.
Yeah, never mind.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Bitcoin helped fuel an explosion in ransomware.
All you need is the title for this article to have a discussion about it. Is that? I mean,
I haven't read it, but yes.
You can't disagree with that, right? Like,
I don't know.
Carlos?
It's like when I hear people say, "Oh, PowerShell's bad. We should block PowerShell."
Oh no!
Then again, you have to click on something. Something else had to happen. In the case of ransomware and Bitcoin, I'm going like, well, ransomware has always been there. People were using
Russian,
Western Union
and post office boxes,
credit cards. You would say going to this website, pay with this credit card. It has always been the only thing I see is we see a shift into something that is easier for them to handle than having to set up a fake credit card transaction. But what I'm seeing is a lower barrier to entry.
Carlos, do you think that Bitcoin enables more anonymity than any other mechanism, or no?
To a certain degree, the problem is that once you use that Bitcoin and it's associated to you, you can track it via the chain. So
really not so much, right?
That's why you have services that do laundering of your Bitcoin. That they launder your Bitcoin, so that way you can retain that anonymity. For example, look at the equation group bid. People automatically found out, hey, wait, somebody's bidding with Bitcoins that were from the Silk Road. Is that the government? And then they went and started looking at the chain of it, and then the government goes like, no, we auctioned those Bitcoins away, and somebody anonymously bought them.
Yep.
Oh, okay, but
I heard about that. That got bought, and they auctioned them, and then the agency said we did very well.
Yeah. So in other words, you're able to track. So in terms of anonymity, no, but in terms of barrier for you to set it up for somebody to pay you in Bitcoin is a lot easier than credit cards and a lot faster than getting money transfers from somebody going to a Western Union or a bank.
Or putting cash in an envelope and shipping it to a PO box.
Yeah. What I would say is it simplified the process. But at the same time, it added a new barrier of entry because it would work probably with a company, but with your regular user that doesn't know what a Bitcoin is or how to get a Bitcoin, more than likely you're getting less of those than you would get if you target an institution. An institution will have the resources to pay somebody to find out how to get the Bitcoin and where to buy the Bitcoin.
I've heard folks now that there's a small sort of industry in that, say someone gets popped with one of these and they actually want to pay the Bitcoin because they have no way out of this and they need their critical data, that they're looking for third parties to negotiate over highly escalated rates for the price of Bitcoin. So for example, say, Paul, I get popped. I want to pay the ransom because I need my stuff back now, and there's no recourse or there's no break in the stuff, but I don't want to publicly disclose that I'm buying Bitcoin. So I'll go to you and have you buy the Bitcoin for me at a premium, and you buy the Bitcoin and then you pay my ransom for me.
Or if you're smart, you find someone that'll sell you Bitcoin at a discounted rate.
Well, usually they're willing to pay an escalated rate because they want the anonymity.
Yeah. I would try and pay a cheaper rate. I try and find a friend that has Bitcoin.
I know you would, but
well, I mean, what if someone has Bitcoin and at 100% markup, it's still a deal,
Right.
but the going rate is 200% of what they paid for it. Like, can you find a friend to like get you out cheaper?
Right.
Basically,
Right.
Right. Like, I can see that as a service.
Absolutely.
A competing service, right? Like, I'm going to sell you Bitcoin at like 200% of what I paid. Someone
I
who's
don't know if it's
100%.
necessarily a competing service because this is economics that you buy Bitcoin when it's low,
Yeah.
and you sell those for an escalated price, but lower than what it is now.
So can you shop around your Bitcoin price
Well, you
to
have
pay
to
a lower ransom?
It's a time thing.
And also here with ransomware, people and the people doing the ransoming and the victim will not care what the price is or are they getting gouged or not.
Right.
What they're going to do is I'm going to spread my malware to enough targets that I can, or if 10% at least pays me, I'm going to get some money that then I have to find out how am I going to clean, what service am I going to use to clean my Bitcoin, what service, how many of these services am I going to spread it out for? Because many of them actually do disappear all of a sudden. Many of them do get hacked, so I have to put that into my risk equation. I need to spread it out. Then I need to find a way of caching all of this and cache it into areas where the banking regulations are going to allow me to remain hidden or make it even more difficult for somebody to subpoena.
You don't want to
records.
pay taxes on your ransomware.
No, so more than likely I'll try to move to Singapore, all of that, and do some other tax havens where I can move that money and then retrieve it. So
It's scary how much Carlos knows about this.
I see the assertions of articles like this kind of in the same light as encryption, right? You see people say, "Oh well, encryption enables malware to blah blah blah," right? It's just a technology. It's a good technology. It's used for different things. Bitcoin is used for good things. Bitcoin can be used for bad things. Encryption is used for good things. Many, many good things. It can be used for bad things. That's really it. So,
very interesting.
Good stuff.
Larry, iOS 0 days.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of chance to look at this. I did hear that there's a new iOS update out. I think it's 9.3.5 to address 3 different Trident iOS vulnerabilities that end up being persistent spyware type of stuff.
right, we are talking about the Apple mobile devices.
Yes,
iOS.
yes, and it is a very interesting attack. What got reported by Citizen Labs is that they were looking at a specific activist, at a specific activist that was being targeted. They went in, and this activist has been attacked by the Saudi government, and they have used tools from FimFisher, from Hacking Group, and all of a sudden he was getting some weird SMS texts. So what they did is that they set up another iPhone, clean iPhone, recently reset. They they copied one of those SMS texts. They clicked on the link, and all of a sudden they saw that malware was actually installed. That the device was remotely jailbroken, and malware was installed on it.
Yep.
So
Carlos, reading through this article to distill that down, it was classic phishing scheme: send text, open web browser, load page, exploit vulnerabilities, install persistent software to gather info. Except it's all invisible and silent.
It's jailbreaking.
And when you look at it, they're chaining 3 different exploits. They're chaining one that gets code execution. Then it goes to another one that exposes kernel memory address that then is used by another bug that then is the one that executes the code and installs the software. So it is a chain of 3 different security bugs. One of them you might go, oh yeah, information disclosure, not that important. Well, yeah, it is. As we've talked before, just because a vulnerability is rated medium or low doesn't mean that it is not important when it comes to chaining it together to get what they want. So once they did this, they sent it over to a group in the UK that examined the data that was placed into the phone itself and then figure out how it was working. And they were able to then trace it back via the command and control structure to this specific group out of Israel that has been operating for many years. So it is not a new hacking team. It is just another group that has been operating at the same time as Hacking Team, Fisher, and others that sell their software to any government that wants to buy it. What I'm actually surprised is this kind of exploit. I would say that it has to be very, very expensive, and it would be something that if I was this company, I would pedal to a very few
nation state.
Yeah, and I
We'll
would
say it,
put a
Carlos,
lot
you
of
don't have to.
controls on how they can use this, because and not to sound offensive against humanitarian activists, but I think it was wasted by being used against such a type of target that the only influence that is having so far against your operations is PR.
Mm.
Well, PR is a big thing.
We should have like nation state roulette. Like who could benefit most?
You have the attribution dice, right?
Yeah, I've got my attribution dice right here.
Also, you have to.
Shall we roll it?
The wheel would have like Russia, China.
All right, here we go. I'm going to roll it.
Yeah, and in this case,
United States, Israel.
It is known that it was Saudi Arabia because
Interesting.
he has been attacked before by the Saudi government.
My roll said insider threat.
Interesting.
And also, when we look at records, open source records, this company has peddled their software to the CIA and to other companies in the States. They're an Israeli company. Israel is not part of the Wassenaar Agreement, so they can sell all of their exploits to whoever they want.
Yep.
Yep, they're not under control. In fact, Israel tries to keep...
Why would Israel sell their exploits, though? Wouldn't they keep them?
Because they have so many of them.
Because they're a private company. It's not.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they keep them to hack into other countries on behalf of the United States?
Because they've got others that they can do that with.
Interesting.
You have to remember that the way Israel operates, for example, we give them billions of dollars so they for weapons so they can keep them to protect themselves, but at the same time, one of the biggest sellers of weapons in Guatemala, Colombia, and many other countries is Israel itself. They're one of the biggest arm dealers you will find out there. In fact, if you go to Colombia and operate with their teams and people over there, their ammo is email ammo. It is Israeli Military Industries ammo, because they have actually manufacturing plants for ammunition inside of Colombia. They have those agreements. They sell the Tavor rifle to many countries inside of Latin America and other countries. They sell the Galil to many companies there. They sell intelligence services. They sell drones. Just like the U.S., just like Russia, just like China.
They have to fund their operations somehow. I mean, Israel is in a obviously hostile hostile neighborhood. They're in a bad neighborhood. So
yeah, and in their case, they can go
because everybody wants
to their client and they can
say,
"Hey, this is battle proven. We've used it."
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the second and third rolls, by the way, pulled up Russia and China appropriately. So,
excellent.
I want to. It's very important just to say that no device is completely safe. You can be running Android. You can be running iOS. You can be running whatever, and it's going to be it's written by human, so there's always going to be one way or another to attack it.
Can we lighten this up a little bit?
4 and 5 Android devices have inherited a Linux snooping flaw. Really quick, Larry.
That wasn't light.
Lighten it up, Larry.
I was going to go with the Epic Games fork and hacked, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, this was hacked with SQL injection, and so my whole take on this story is, look, if you're collecting customer data, and even if that customer data is your username and password, that is still valuable information to attackers. If you're hosting that, you have, I believe, you have a certain level of responsibility for security for your site, and that certain level of responsibility, if I were to define it in technical terms, means that you don't have a freaking SQL injection vulnerability that allows an attacker to steal all of your goddamn credentials.
Right. And we talk about that from the article. They talk about be careful of password reuse. How many people use the same username and password in the forums?
As we know as pen testers, everyone does.
That they do in the games?
Not everyone, but enough percentage that
to make it worthwhile.
To make it worthwhile.
Well, how do you make it worthwhile? Because you go log into their games, you change their password, you take over their account, and you sell their in-game assets.
Well,
also, when you look at many of the systems, it is a pain in the ass to change your password.
Yes,
I'm having that problem with Steam. I enable I get decode, and all of a sudden go like, okay, time to rotate my passwords. I got my calendar alert. I go into Steam and say, okay, how the fuck do I change my password? And believe me, I've been through several articles that say, go here and you'll find it. I followed the steps. The UI doesn't look the same. The links are not in the same place.
Because of rapid development, Carlos.
Yeah,
new release every 2 weeks.
I saw this app recently that I was using that you actually cannot change your password in the app. There's nothing in like settings or anything where you
got to go to the website.
You will know. Yeah, it's on the website. You cannot change the password on the website. You want to change the password? You go to the front page and you do reset password and you put in your username, and it emails you a link where you can change your password.
I think Steam is now that way because I still haven't found a way to change my password.
It's really bad when we on the show can't figure out how the mechanism to change our goddamn passwords.
Yeah.
Kevin looks like he's got something to say on that one.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, there's one solution to all these problems we've been talking about is probably put a laugh in front of it, and you're good to go.
Or biometrics.
Two-factor authentication.
Right. Put a WAF in front of it, and you're good to go.
You can fingerprint my pucker.
Before we go, I was on episode 52 of the Trusted Sec podcast. You can go to trustedsec.com/podcast.
Can I say episode 52? No, I'm kidding. I love those guys. I love those guys.
Did you watch? I know why you're laughing, but did you watch or listen to rather?
I haven't.
Episode? It is absolutely hilarious. Like
it's the reminiscing about old stories, isn't it?
Well, so the two
haven't
main
invited me. I'm pissed.
No, well, they didn't really invite me. I kind of invited myself, to be honest with you. But so, via text messages with Dave Kennedy. But the two main themes for this show are farting on airplanes and shack stories. Because Dave Shackelford makes an appearance on the show.
Man, I could have been on that farting on airplanes because I've got a story.
And multiple shack stories, I'm assuming.
I do like how they rip each other in the podcast.
It was like so much fun to be on their podcast. Like it was so much fun. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Episode 52 was the episode that I was on. If you want to be entertained, trustedsec.com/podcast. It was a good time. It was a good time. I encourage everyone text. We all have Dave's number. Text Dave.
Him.
I want to build a podcast, and then he'll make it happen. Rick Hayes, who used to do the InfoSec Daily podcast, which was one of the only, at one time probably was the only daily InfoSec podcast. There's actually another one now, but not as entertaining as Rick's podcast. Rick was
They've started to get grumpy, so I would be careful if he gets a lot of texts.
Yeah. Yep. No. I meant like Larry and Carlos and Kevin and Joff.
Yeah.
Like I mean, not everyone listening.
Oh, I don't know whether Dave would want me to come on. Well, you know what?
Absolutely, he would. Absolutely, he would. No, it was a lot of fun. We're gonna have those guys on our show. We're gonna
if Dave invites me on, I'll have to go on and tell him the story about when remember intern Darren?
Yeah.
When he and I traveled when we were working together, and I farted on an airplane.
Dude, Dave has like the most epic story about farting, and it's not Dave. Because I'm like, guys, you don't like if you have to break wind on an airplane. Like what? Dave's like, no, I'm a gentleman. I go to the bathroom, which is total BS. We all know is total BS. But
I'll tell you guys a story after we're off the air because I'll save it for their show. But I'll tell you guys a story about me farting on an airplane when I tried to be a gentleman and it didn't work out.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Which is like all the time.
Wow. No, only on this show.
The hardest hitting news here.
You heard
That's
it.
right.
You heard it. Exclusive.
Exclusive. Next week's technical segment: how to fart on an airplane and not get caught. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see you on next week's episode of Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out.
We have a fart machine, you know.
Nice. Better out than in.
It's
That's
my
what I always
kids.
say.
It's my kids.
Better out than in. That's what I always